Hey, welcome in, everybody. I'm News 8 Chief Meteorologist Eric Snitil, joined alongside James Gilbert and Kayla Smith, who all three of us, by the way, you can't see any of this right now. We're all dancing to that cute jingle at the beginning of this. So we're starting this off on a nice note here. This is our annual winter weather special, just done on a very different format. Usually you see us on some kind of a 30 or a 60-minute pre-taped segment that we do on TV. We thought this year, well, all right, we got this cool CTV app. And we also have Facebook Live, which allows everybody to be able to kind of log on and comment and ask questions. Why don't we try to make this more interactive? So for those of you that are joining us on the News 8 Facebook Live page, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little comment box down there. You will be able to talk to us. We can see some of your comments. And as we go deeper throughout this next 30 minutes, if you have any kind of questions, anything you want to know about our thoughts, you can pick our brain on where this winter is ultimately going to go. That's how we pull this off. You see the three shot that we've got up here right now. Say hi, everybody.
Hello. Good morning.
Wait. No. It's PM time now, Chase. Yeah, not only is it rare for all of us to be in the same room at the same time, this might be one of the few times, James, I've seen you at 7 p.m.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe the Christmas party last year.
That's probably one of them. Yeah. You awake? You doing all right?
Yeah, all right. You know, I'm actually kind of excited with more incoming snow. So we don't have to talk too much about what's coming up in the next couple of days. We can obviously focus on the long range, which is always a crystal ball that we try to tap into. And it's always, a funny conversation to have, looking ahead season-wide. And we're going to have this kind of running in the background of ideas of this could happen, this may not happen. We're so much more sure 3 to 5 to 7 days out. Confidence is much, much higher in that range than it is 3 to 5 months out. But we play this game because there's a lot of interest out there. And there are models that try. We do have global seasonal models that try to test their skills at forecasting out that 3 to 5 month range.
Yeah. And so what I usually like to tell people is, the number to beat, the benchmark, is something better than a coin flip. If you flip a coin enough times, you're going to be right half the time, you're going to be wrong half the time. With the way the science is with some of these longer range seasonal models that go out, it is only very slightly better than a coin flip. So we always have to caution you with this. We do an 8-day, and I'll tell people all the time, and I've heard you do the same thing, James, that even on an 8-day forecast, days 6, 7, 8, there's not much detail in there. There's a lot of ambiguity. So you start talking about many months out into the forecast, you have to take things with an appropriately large grain of salt. So with all of that in mind, we feel like we'll tee this up with what is average for us, what is normal, because frankly, we have not had what would be considered an average winter in terms of snowfall in a while around here. And Sean, if we can take that center monitor full here, you're looking at Rochester's monthly climate normals for snowfall, which largely begins in the month of November, which is where we are right now. And you add all those numbers up and you come out to roughly 100 inches of snow. And that is a number that we have not had now, 6 or 7 consecutive seasons, I think it is, that we have not hit that 100-inch average.
17, 18. Yeah. 2017, 2018.
So it's been a while. It's not a record-long streak for what it's worth. You got to go all the way back, though, to the 1950s to find the last time that Rochester has had a streak that has gone that long without getting that 100 inches of snowfall. Kayla, you did a fantastic job building this whole spreadsheet. So we got our top 10 warmest, our top 10 coldest. Walk us through what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so we have got the top 10 coldest, top 10 warmest winters on record for Rochester. And this is based off of the average temperature daily. So it averages the high temperature to the low temperature, and then it's the average of those averages. And what you also see highlighted there in different colors is what period the ENSO pattern was in. So were we in an El Nino year? Were we in a La Nina year? Or were we in a neutral period? Or the greens was recording of the La Nina and El Nino phases. That did not start until 1950, and you can tell with the top 10 coldest winters there. If we maybe want to take our boxes off there, yeah, there we go. We could see that a lot of those were in the green. A lot of these were pre-1950, that we had some very cold winters. We're talking 1917, 1918, 1903, 1904. I'd ask people if they could remember it, but you probably can't go in that far back. And then with our warmest winters, one of our warmest winter on record, and these records go back to, you can see the data starting there on the right side, 1872, 1873 winter. The warmest winter that we had on record was 2 winters ago, 2023, 2024 season. And that was a 1-year El Nino period. Sometimes you can get stronger effects of the El Nino La Nina phase if you are in a 2-year or a 3-year period, hence why I make the distinctions between those. You can see the 3-year La Nina period that we had in 2022-2023 winter season. That also cracked our top 10 list for warmest winters.
Now, James, I'm just looking at the top 10 warmest here.
Yeah.
And you look at the years that those occurred, there seem to be a lot that are relatively recent.
Yes. Yeah.
Is there something to that?
Yeah, it's definitely climate change for sure. So climate change usually impacts colder regions more than it does warmer regions because colder air has more room to grow, more room to warm. So looking at the average temperature over Rochester, there's not a huge, let's focus on winter, right? We're talking winter. So when you look at you've got mean average temperature, that's just for year to year, right?
Right.
Jan 1 to December 31st. If you look at the mean average temperature for meteorological winter, December, January, February, and you look at the past 50 years, you get a 5-degree warming. That's a degree every decade, which is just bonkers. That's a significant amount of warming in the last 5 years. It gets a little bit more muddled when you go back to POR, which is 1881. So you see a little bit of a less change, but that's a significant warming in the last 50 years in just Rochester. So that's new. That's noteworthy. We're getting more years. They're happening more frequently. And it is pairing, I can't just make the blanket statement of we're getting warmer years. We get these cooling events where, remember, this is climate change where it impacts the entire world. You get big warming months in the Arctic, and that forces air out southward. And I'm teasing a little bit of the conversation we're going to have in the next 15 minutes or so, that you get these warming events in the Arctic, and that can force cold air southward and actually give us cold blasts. So I'm not saying it's always going to continue to be warm, but clearly the trend is toward warmer winters and less snowfall. And that's, I'm going to call it anecdotal because, there's not, it's not perfect evidence here, but we got to go back to 1718 to get a year with over 100 inches, and it's just 88, 52, 50, 87, 69. It's hard to get winters with big snowfall numbers.
Yeah. So we'll bring this up here too. So we can go back through the Rochester data that goes all the way back to the late 1800s. And you see the regression line here. This is total snowfall in Rochester, which when you start it from that beginning point, does still slope upward, implying that, superficially Rochester is getting more snow. Now, the catch with these graphs, though, James, is always where you start it from. Yeah. So, for example, if we were to just start this in the 50s or the 60s, it would tell a little bit of a different story. So when you look at this over the 150 years, it's tougher to find much of a signal. But over our recent decades especially, it's different.
Yeah,
it's different.
So everything I just talked about was temperature. I didn't mention snow at all. So snow is different.
Yeah.
And snow is by far the hardest thing in meteorology to measure. It's harder than pressure. It's harder than wind. It's harder than temperature. It's harder than dew point. All these complicated things, wet bulb temperature, that's easier to measure than snow. Snow is incredibly hard to measure because you have shrinking, you have compaction, you have warming, you have ice. There's all these reasons. No, that's one. 2, we don't know how they measured in the 1896 snow, so there's a lot of questions there. So that's kind of the big asterisk 1. And 2, the snow trends are interesting. There's conversations about a warmer lake with climate change will mean more lake effect snow. Has that really panned out? Is there good scientific evidence for that? Not necessarily, but it makes sense from a weather standpoint. You get a warmer lake, you're going to get more snow. We haven't really seen that pan out. With the data that you showed, we've had some warm seasons, but it hasn't really resulted in necessarily more snow because of lake effect.
Right. We're trying to pull up here some of the lake temperature graphs because we've had this conversation for every winter weather outlook that we've done over these years. Yes. It feels like recently we've been going in with Lake Ontario water temperatures running exceptionally warm during the early part of the season.
I want to just stop us for a
Yeah, go
second here
ahead.
because we did get a question asking about the dip in the 1800s. I believe it was on either the snowfall graphic or the temperature graphic, whichever one we just had up. And without looking at it, I would assume that that dip would be because there's missing data.
Yeah, 116 days of missing data out of that one. So that was from 1883, which is not uncommon, by the way, when you go that far back, that you've got holes, you've got chunks that were missing there. So you can weed that kind of out, but that's why you have such a significant dip there. And, because I would surmise that most of that missing data probably was happening during the warm season because it's so biased toward the cold with that. But so yeah, that's what you're looking at. That was missing almost a third of the entirety of the year. So that's what's responsible for that. Kayla, you mentioned the different phases here, El Nino and La Nina. As we get into seasonal forecasting, particularly in the winter, that's usually a meteorologist's first starting point. And Lord knows there are many. And we do not get to define and dictate exactly how a snow season is going to go, strictly based on La Nina or neutral or El Nino, but it does help. So let's talk a little bit about that. And Sean, we'll pull up our max graphics here. Kayla, so what is La Nina? And it's a weak La Nina that we are in, and that is relevant too. What is it, and how does it play into how things could go here for the next couple of months?
Right. So when you have a La Nina period, you have the sea surface temperatures off the Pacific that get slightly colder than average. And to be able to declare it La Nina period, you do have to have at least negative 0.5 degrees below where that average is for at least a 3-month consecutive period. And that is what we are entering as we head into this season. This also does slightly increase your easterly winds, your easterly equatorial winds, so you get those cooler temperatures in the Pacific, and that can affect our winters. It affects a lot of the weather that you get across the country.
Yep.
So no different for us here. It can affect the way that jet stream lines up. It can put us in a slightly cooler pattern, as we saw with the top 10 warmest and coldest that I listed with those El Nino, La Nina phases. We didn't see too much of a correlation with that, but it certainly does and can impact our winters. Now, as Eric mentioned, we are entering a weak La Nina phase for this winter that's likely going to be fading out as we head into the spring season. And I actually was able to interview with the National Weather Service last week, and I asked them how they were forecasting for this winter weather season. And we did talk about La Nina. If we, Sean, want to play media clips 3 and 4, and we can hear them. This was the meteorologist in charge there, Michael Fries, and he told me about what they're seeing with the La Nina and how that could affect us here.
Once you get into seasonal forecasting, then things like the state of the El Nino Southern Oscillation System in the Pacific becomes important, which just within the last several weeks, we've trended toward a weak La Nina, which is pretty important for how we deal with, the winter outlook in our neck of the woods. They also start to different other sorts of circulations become important as well, like the Pacific North America, the Arctic Oscillation, the North Atlantic Oscillation, all these different things that deal in different time scales in terms of how they may or may not affect whether we are colder or warmer or wetter or drier for periods of weeks at a time. We're starting out with our base state being a weak La Nina, which is generally less than 1 degree Celsius colder than normal in the equatorial Pacific. So that's where we're starting out, but all the climate models indicate that weak La Nina will weaken to basically a neutral status by the end of the winter. What that means for us, typically looking at work that meteorologists from the National Weather Service have done locally over the past several decades, it typically means that we get a higher tendency for lake effect events, especially early in the season when we're in the weak La Nina, meaning, cold bursts of air that come down, get the lake effect machine going. And then as we trend toward the end of the winter, that sort of tails out.
Well, and that's really interesting too, because what we've had around here for the better part of our most recent winters has been a slow start. And it's been like, we got to wait until January and February to finally get winter to kind of ramp up. Superficially, could this be a winter where it's actually in reverse, where we end up with a lot of our lake effect and a lot of our snow that ends up happening into the first part of our winter, and then tapering that as we go farther in time?
Yeah, that's possible. We average 8 inches of snow in November the past 5 years. 0 last year, 3.5, 4.5, 4, and 1. So they've all been at or below half of average for November, and they've all been lower than average snowfall. I do think we're going to finish this month with, we'll see what we get in the next couple of days, but I think probably close to average, which would be 8 inches, nothing crazy here. And get things going early in the year with some more Arctic cold blasts, some more lake effect events. And also, usually snow in December doesn't stick around too long. You get some quick warm-ups right after it, like when you go to 50s and 60s. So it doesn't stick around that long.
Right.
But the snow totals don't matter. Well, whether or not the snow sticks around. This is not how much snow is on the ground. It's what falls and what gets measured.
Yeah, speaking of snow on the ground, one of the metrics we usually use to kind of do these seasonal outlooks is Siberian snow cover, where we look at what's going on basically on the other side of the planet. And the logic is the more snow that you've got, typically, that deeper snow pack, that will have an impact on our polar vortex. So always there. It's a relatively new term that's come to fruition over the last few years, but it can weaken the jet stream that basically contains the polar vortex and allows the jet stream to become much more amplified. An amplified pattern with north to south undulations is what will drive very cold air being able to penetrate southward into the United States. We'll throw this out there too, because I don't think, James, we've ever had an outlook here that we've talked about this, because it hasn't really been relevant. But Sean, we'll bring up our center monitor. This has been all over the news and all over social media. Sudden stratospheric warming.
Yes.
A very ominous term here. And we're looking above the level that typically our normal weather occurs. You're many miles up into the atmosphere here.
You got the troposphere and the stratosphere.
Yeah. And normally we don't concern ourselves with the stratosphere.
No. It's very high up.
Very high up. But we are finding that maybe we should be concerning ourselves more with the stratosphere. But basically the going argument here is this. We get these sudden stratospheric warmings. We get these high altitude waves that go crashing and breaking. And this basically allows the overall flow and the pattern to devolve. And in some cases, even reverse with the overall wind flow. And it's warming of the air aloft, but the logic here is kind of against what you would typically think. That warming is what will ultimately drive the breakdown of that jet stream and can get you into colder and snowier times. And James, we're pretty confident we got one of these underway right now. I mean, that's not so much a forecast. Right. The question is going to be, who gets it? Because we know we're going to get that amplified pattern. Right. Is it us? Is it the West? Is it more in Europe? We don't know. But we do know what usually happens with this.
Right. It's like you're moving water here. You can move water from one place and it pushes the water away, but does the water flow to where you want it to go, or is it going to flow in another direction? So it could flow down to Russia, to Northern Europe, to Canada, to the United States. And that goes back to the climate change, the global warming thing. You get these warming events. You get weird things to happen. We don't necessarily know what's going to result from this, but we haven't seen one of these in a long time. And so in the past several years, we haven't had that much snow. So could this correlate potentially to a snowier event? And I think that's definitely possible. Looking back at last year and the little snow that we got throughout the year, it was really interesting to see the small snowfall amounts. We really still haven't seen that foot and a half event, at least in Rochester. Mm-hmm. Webster, different story there. Mm-hmm. Ontario, Williamson, different story there. They got some foot plus snowfalls. But Monroe County itself, Gates, close to the airport, Henrietta-ish, we still haven't seen the big snowfalls. So I'm interested to see if this makes things weird, if this gives us some warm spikes, some cold spikes, some nor'easters where we get a foot and a half of snow. which we still, again, haven't had. Because last year, I'd love to talk about salt if we can. Because last year, Kayla, you weren't here. We got 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 2 inch, all these little storms here and there, just nickel and dime. It would snow for like a week and a half. And we would just get all these little snows. And so the plow guys and gals that are out there were just constantly going through salt, an amazing amount of salt. It was everywhere, but they weren't plowing because they didn't need to. So the entire city of Rochester and Monroe County was covered in salt. And so I've been talking with some people that have made sure that we have lots of salt, and we've got pictures of Mount Morris as well that show that that is ready to rock with the salt as well, which is good to see. Thank you. Yeah, exactly. So that's good to see, and I think we're definitely prepared for whatever winter will throw at us. But that was a serious issue last year. There were times by February, March where they were running out.
I did actually talk to the Deputy Director of Public Safety with the Office of Emergency Management in Monroe County, and we have a clip of him talking about the salt trucks and how they feel they are prepared for the winter weather season. Sean, you want to play clip media 9?
Everything that we've heard so far, it's not like last year. Everybody seems to have adequate supplies on hand. All the salt barns are filled and ready to go. And so we feel very good, much better than we did a year ago with some of the supply chain issues. And now you wait for the weather. It doesn't mean if we end up with a significantly higher than normal snowfall and colder than normal winter and you're burning salt at a higher rate than you planned, you could have some issues in the future. But right now, we're in very good shape to start the winter.
I like it. That's good to hear. It's comforting.
Yes, especially saying it's not like last year.
Right. Well, I just think last year they were coming off two of the least snowy winters on record, right? So there was just no snow. So I think they were like, well, we barely got anything. We have surplus. We probably don't need to have more or buy more. And then we had a winter where literally the most snow that we got was half a foot, at least at the airport. And we just kept getting these smaller events, which from a plow perspective, you'd rather just lay salt rather than have to plow.
All right, so this gets us into the ultimate question at this point. With everything that we have now discussed between weak La Nina trending more neutral, and we've got this SSW event that's going to be underway. So what is our outlook for the overall forecast this winter? And there's never really one number we could just throw at the wall and see what sticks here. Instead, I find it better to be talking in the scale of probability. And that's the fun part with this. Each of these little ingredients that we've talked about plays a role, but it's a small role. It's how everything intertwines and mingles with one another. Individual events, individual storm tracks. We had these last few winters, even when we've had La Ninas with relatively active storm tracks, the tendency has been for the lows to track west of western New York, which puts us in the warm sector of a good chunk of what's being exhausted with the precip of these storms. So you get snow, but to James's point, it's more nickel and dime kind of snow sometimes with that. So for me, and I'll let both of you chime in on what your 2 cents are out of this, I think when we go back probably for the last half decade or so, in my mind, this is probably the best chance, I could argue, that we get back to triple-digit snowfall amounts than we've had in a little while. But I'm not convinced still that we're going to end up doing it. And I think we're going to know a lot about our capability of being able to do that based on what the next month is going to hold. I think December could kind of be a big key here. If we can have a big December, we can pull this off. But as we transition toward a more neutral phase out of this from La Nina, and when looking at face value some of the longer range seasonal models that do go out farther out in time here, getting into January and February and March, they're starting to signal a very familiar look, which is a lean toward relative warmth again, which, trust me, you could still get plenty of snow in that kind of pattern if things just line up just right. But typically, that's not what you're going to be looking for big snow. So, James, what are your thoughts on that? That this could be weighted toward the first half of winter.
I think that's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable estimate. I am a show me before it happens. Like, and I've seen other meteorologists around here think that we're going to get the bigger numbers.
Yeah.
For me, it is just prove it. If you look at the last 30 years, we go from a regression line of 111 inches in 1995 to 80 inches in 2025.
Yeah.
That is a 30-inch drop in snowfall. Again, that's recent. It's not all the data, so you got to put that caveat in there. But for me, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. I'm going to go 70 to 80 inches for this year.
Wow.
Because again, prove me wrong. I love snow. The reason why I forecast the weather is because I love snow.
Yeah.
I want the snow. I don't want people to think I'm, hedging my bet. But it happens time and time and again. So I'm going to go like 70 to 80. I think it's going to be below average. I think we're going to have warm spouts in January and February, and it just doesn't happen. So
yeah. Kayla?
There's my take.
Well, obviously, this is going to be my first winter here in Rochester, so I don't have any anecdotal data to go off of.
That means you're going to be the one who's right. That's how this works a lot of times.
Well, I feel like the fact that it is my first winter, just, the gods would probably give more snow. I'm going to lean probably below triple digits. I'm going to put a guess out there that we are in the 80 to 90 inch range.
Yeah. Well, and truth be told, I think that's probably where my head is at here too. If we do get a more robust next 30 to 45 days out of that, that's how you can accomplish finally getting back to triple digits. But
and so far we've got I think it was about a little under 5 inches so far.
Yeah.
So
which is about pace.
Chipping away.
But when I start seeing, it's funny how memories get triggered in the back of your mind where, you're looking at some of the longer range and it's like, where have I seen this before?
Yeah.
And it just brings back those familiar brain cells, I suppose, of, it sometimes feels like it's an uphill battle to be able to get sustained cold in a favorable storm track.
Right.
And we haven't had a lot of that recently here. So for snow lovers, the nugget of optimism that I will give you is, you've got a reasonable chance that we can pull this off of getting back to triple digits. Remember, we're just talking about the Rochester airport. We vary wildly in different parts of Western New York. Proximity to the lake and elevation. There's a million different things. Getting 100 inches of snow is not that hard to do along 104 in Wayne County. It's much more difficult to do as you start going farther off to the south into the Finger Lakes. So we're really talking Rochester from that standpoint. But no, we will see how this goes, where this first half is, can you gain enough ground to be able to pull that off? But it seems like the vibe between the three of us is a general lean toward, probably again below average overall, but some wiggle room of a ceiling here maybe with that. So it'll be fun to see how all of this goes.
John Kutchko, of course, had to chime in. He's going with 101. Yeah, 101.5.
Breaking the triple digits.
He had a good winter.
101.5.
Last year at his ice volcano at Letchworth,
yes,
that was, snow aside, we had a lot of cold around here last winter.
We certainly did.
So we'll leave you with this, regardless of how much snow we get. We want to show you some of the big snowstorms that we have had through the past several decades here. So Sean, if you want to let that roll, and that's how we will leave you with some parting video from this.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 on demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.